Good morning, all. More pepper mills. Pepper mill and salt shaker. I don't have the salt shaker ready. We'll do the pepper mill part first, anyhow. So I need my spindle roughing gouge sharpened. It's working with this Spectre ply stuff. It's rather abusive on tools. And a lot of this work's getting done with the spindle roughing gouge period, anyhow. We'll give it a quick touch, and then we'll get to making some dirt. So we'll go to there. We need let's try the piece of black foam. Used this before. Seems to help a little bit with the cameras. A little less reflection. We'll see. See what it looks like. Whether it does a better job. Probably might be a pain with these because everything's smaller. So these are pretty much, I have the blanks. I did them the other day where I've done all the drilling part and all this has been finished. Actually, that's one of the places where we need to start at. Before we get too far in front of ourselves, we need to polish, clean up the ends of these. I kind of forgot that. That's why I did them that way the other day. Was so that we could hopefully remember. And I forgot that there was something else I needed to open. Bear with me one short second. I have to open forgot to open the camera app. Of course, now it wants to show. There we go. Because for this, we could be zoomed in considerably. So you could see what we're doing. Not that it's going to be overly great because it's going to be dark. That should help it. Could be over a little bit further maybe. That should work. Because it's really the only, kind of like the only time I have to be able to get in there after these parts. Not that it necessarily has to be polished up. I just feel it looks a little nicer if it is. The outside edge here I can buff later. But of course this little inner lip I can't do. This is the only time I can get to it, so. And this is just some of the abrasive paste. That's all it is. It actually does a pretty good job on the super glue. This has the 3460 already on it. These parts. You'll see more of that a little bit later. Pretty simple to use. The only problem is it usually leaves a little white ring in the bottom of them, but I can live with that a little bit. So I'll do both bottom and top while we're here. We start out at a fairly low speed, you know, 400, 500, 600 RPM, something like that. Just trying to keep it from flying all over the place, for one. Fair amount of pressure. And you can hear it. You won't be able to hear it, but when you're using this stuff, you can actually hear it, that it's doing what it's supposed to do. The abrasive is working. And then once it gets nice and quiet, then you can speed it up a little bit and finish polishing, basically. I don't know that it should be a fairly durable shine, I think. Nothing else that looks better. And this blank here is actually quite a bit too long. These are only 6-inch pepper mills. That's what I did. I did one yesterday. I can show you a little bit later what it looks like when they're finished. Because the tops should be about 2 inches, so the tenon part's going to go away on the top. And this should only be about 4.5 or something like that to the top of the tenon. It's kind of, I don't know. I did them yesterday. Like I said, I did one yesterday. Kind of maybe a little unorthodox way of doing it, and I don't want it that way. Now it's time to actually go back in between centers. Just basically a wooden drive center. Nothing more than a cone. And I put my finger on it to make sure, because it is wood, so it has a tendency to move a little bit. And then basically a cone live center. My live center is actually a piece of resin. So, because you'll see, I will actually cut down into it. That's really where I should have started, was get one of the kits out. Maybe if you did these more in a production style, I would have some better numbers. Need that part and shaft. And I also need to go back overhead. This is pretty much all overhead kind of work. We can let me get that mounted, and then we can bring it in a little closer. But this is the crush grind pepper mill kits that I use. So if I take that and hold that in there, but we don't have this thing is really long. Like I say, it's probably really not really necessarily a good way of doing this with these. So like I say, it should end up being around 4.5 inches, something like that. What I did yesterday, that's what we're going to do again today. I set my calipers to the inside of this, because even though I've drilled all this stuff with all these holes with a Forstner bit, doesn't mean that it's going to be overly accurate in a way, so to speak. And unfortunately, you will have to look at the dust hose because this stuff is extremely dusty. So I'll just start down here. We'll use our wider parting tool. And we'll get down there somewhere close. And I can put my calipers right over the spinning piece. And then when I slip over, then we're there. Theoretically. Probably not on this one, but might be. This doesn't need to be well, it won't be a tight fit when we're done. And then we'll just take our top, and it pretty much slides right over at this point. But like I say, it's should be way too long, which I'm sure it is. So I can just sort of eyeball it, and we're like probably a half an inch too long. So we can just sort of sneak up on some of this stuff. So we needed a half. So we'll do it in like 2 stages. Like I say, this stuff is kind of nasty to work with. The tenant's only going to be about that long. Let me get some water. So I'm literally going to cut through this with the skew. You'll see it just stops spinning. It's not like something's going to go flying away from you. Just to get rid of that piece. And then we can check our fit. Now it probably won't fit. It does. Forcibly, but it fits. So we can see whether we're getting, at least I can see it, we're still need about another quarter. Plus, I got to remember this part of this up here is going to go away. And like I say, once again, we're going to do the same thing over again. Because otherwise it's too long. There, it's just about ready to stop spinning. There it goes. That's also why that live center is resin rather than the metal one. Because I have a tendency from time to time to cut into it. So now there's our little rod. It's just barely, that's probably pretty close. I take that off, clean up this a little bit more. I think that's going to be short enough. Now we can go back to our skew again, because this is sort of cut on a little bit of an angle. As you see, when I break through, the live center stops spinning. This basically is spinning free at that point too. So now I need to cut a taper down here, about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to clean that up just a little bit there, because otherwise it was a force fit, and we can't have a force fit there. It needs to fit loosely, because there again, it's a pepper mill top, so it needs to spin. I basically just put enough pressure on it so that it will drive it. This one today is squeaking a little bit, so it's not quite as well centered as what I would have liked, maybe. But it doesn't really matter because it is centered. So we know down here we need to flatten out a little area, just a little flat, because these are all getting two beads on the bottom. And I do cheat. I'm using a beading tool. If you were so minded, you could use a spindle gouge or something like that, but I kind of believe in using what tools are at my disposal. So I'll mark both beads, which is the really important part if you're going to use any of these beading tools, is you need to mark them first, because otherwise you won't get them where you want them. And when it becomes a round bead, you stop, because it's not a tool to remove excess material off the top. It will remove a little bit. As you see, I pick up the handle a little bit, so it sort of becomes a negative rake scraper in some ways, right there. So that's our two beads. And now we can start shaping the rest. The rest seems a bit low today. Make sure everything's true first. And I'll start forming the top. It's basically just a big toe. I think the good part about working with this stuff is kind of very pretty shavings. It wouldn't be so daggone dusty. Because it is a very, very dry material. And just tons of glue in it. We're going to make basically our big bead down here, which I do that with my small spindle gouge. That's really what I'm used to using. And then we can make our shape. Once you get these things to this, basically to this stage, they're actually pretty quick to make. It's just all the farting around and fussing around, making the drilling all the holes, and and of course you want to finish the inside of that part. And the wonders of doing everything like this between centers is that I can take this on and off umpteen times, and it doesn't make any difference. In some ways, you can turn these two parts together. I just don't particularly care to do it because there is slop in there now. I think that looks good for the base. So we can go ahead and sand it up, finish it. So we're slower speed bound considerably, usually down around 600 RPMs or so. If I push too hard, you can see I can stop it. That gives you an idea how little pressure that there is holding it on there. I think we need new sandpaper because we're not getting much dirt off of that. Sandpaper is a pretty relatively cheap commodity, so I use a lot of it. I basically will probably use one of these little squares. We'll do one pepper mill, and that'll probably be it. I started with 220. And it's a pretty clean cut. It's a clean cut. There should be nothing torn. So there's no real need to go below that unless I have a bunch of ripples in there or something or other, but I didn't really see any. At 320, I am going to hit the end grain up here just to make sure it was cut with a skew. I mean, that should be very, very clean too. Need a paper towel. I want to wipe off the dust. More importantly, any grit that might be left behind. So 400, then I will knock that sharp edge off. I don't take any of the real sharp edges off of things so I get to at least 400, if not even 600. Because I want the crisp detail. It just can't be sharp enough to slice your finger open. Especially on something like this. I mean, this is a piece that's definitely going to be used and handled quite a bit. So at 600, then I will touch the beads a little bit. Keyword is a little bit, I'm not trying to change the shape. The shape's already there. It's just making sure that I have a really clean surface there. And lastly, it'll be 800. And then we can sort of inspect things. I'm going to do a little random orbit sanding with sort of with the grain in a way, just in case there's any scratches. This stuff won't show up much in the way of scratches anyhow, I don't think. Just a good practice to get into. If there's going to be anything, it's going to be down around this bead. So it's ready for finish. Get as much of the dirt wiped off as I can. I'm going to turn the dust collector off for a minute. And then we're going to put some finish on it. I think I better get a new glove. What do we have laying here? Got this one. This is going to get a super glue finish, which is pretty much what I use on most everything. Don't need that. So what we're going to use is a 3460. The slow setting CA glue. This is a thicker one than what if you've watched before and I did flat work or non-colored stuff. I saw scratches. There's a tiny little scratch there. I think that's got it. We're going to run the speed super slow. Basically as slow as what my lathe will run, which is about 170 RPMs on this particular belt. You get some glue on the paper towel, and then from there I will actually just dribble it on the top of the piece. Because this needs to be saturated, basically. Because this stuff here is like a sponge. That's also why I'm using this particular super glue rather than a 3408, which is really the normal finishing super glue. This will do the same job as a 3408. It just works a lot better on things like this that are really porous. What I'm looking for is dry spots. And it doesn't take very much to finish this kind of stuff. The wonders of using this kind of stuff rather than like an oil finish or something like that is it's going to be done today. I won't be able to buff this today, but it will be done. Well, it's going to be done here in a couple seconds, really. This has about a 50-second time delay to it. So as you can see, I'm not really in any big hurry. I can start drying it off as it spins a little bit, but for the most part, I'm going to do that by hand with it not spinning, because I'm looking to dry it off completely. I don't want any of it sitting on the surface. I just want what went below the surface and soaked into the grain. The beads are probably the most challenging part, to get down in there to get that excess out of there. But if I don't get all the excess out of there, it's really not a super big deal. And then we'll shoot it with a little activator. I'm going to shoot with the activator without it even spinning. I'll do like 2 passes, 1 pass on each side, maybe 3 passes. Give that a couple seconds to start the chain reaction. If your fingers are wet, it may try and stick to them right there, but my fingers aren't wet. There's a little place that there's some sticking up. But see, if I rub my fingers across there, I can actually pull some of it back to the surface. So this is where this gets set off to the side for a couple minutes. And we'll work on our lid. So we switch to this one. Let's see whether we got to do more work to this one. Because the wonders of, yeah, see, it's too tight. Because I'm taking these and I drill them, but I also clean up the drill hole. So kind of depends on how much I've taken off by drilling the drill hole. So I may have to take and change this one around, because this is not a cone. This is going to be like a box type fit. I want this one to actually fit pretty tight. If it don't fit perfectly tight, it doesn't really hurt it, but it's close. I also don't want to break it and just, do a slam fit on there. Just about. Like I say, I don't want to break it, so this parting tool needs a little touch up. These kind of tools, these like parting tools and things like this, if you need a quick touch up rather than going over to the grinder, just take it on a diamond hone. This one here is actually CBN, and just drag it back across a couple times, and that'll freshen that up a little bit. At least it should have, but it doesn't seem like it did. Okay, so now it's almost loose. That's usually the case. So, in order to make it tight, paper towels are 2-ply, or maybe 3-ply even, I don't know. Now I can take a piece of paper towel, the 1-ply, which is the challenging part of getting the plies apart on a paper towel. Now it's actually tight. And we know from what we saw earlier that we have to remove this entire piece down here. I'm going to have to go turn my dust collector on, or I'll be coughing and carrying on. And we'll take it down to about nothing. I can use my spindle guide to do the same thing I was doing with the skew. And remember, there's a hole in there. Normally don't pop out of the hole. I don't know if this was quite tight enough to do. And just bring the live center back into it. This one's going to be a pain. I should have did it with a skew, because now it kind of messed up the end a little bit. So if I take my nice sharp skew, I can use it as a chisel. Take a little bit of that off. I will recut it, but it's left enough that should work. And it wasn't allowing the center to go back in where it belonged. Okay, so now it's back to where we wanted. I should have, because we probably have more to take off of this. So now we're back to the original, or the bottom. No, that's good right there. Could have maybe a little bit more off, but that's enough. So now we can shape this. Sort of the same as the base. I just drew it up a little bit, although it actually is running quite true. I can use my spindle roughing guide to make this cove part up here. That's what's in our hand. And it will allow me to make bigger cuts versus the small spindle guide. But just going to make it a little bit faster. Have to be careful down there because we're going to run into the live center. And here's where you get to practice making beads. Making a bead. And it's going to be a big bead. And it needs to go down. This will be the next place of sort of messing around a bit with where it ends at. Because I want it to be about the same as what it is on the top. So let's get the bottom right first. Hopefully Try and keep my little piece of paper towel in there. So what I'm looking for, that actually looks pretty good. I want this flat area and this flat area to be about the same size. At least that's how I make them. Now this top piece needs to be cleaned up a little bit. Let's see if it'll cooperate. I can hold it, give it a little bit of a hold with my hand and use my spindle gouge as sort of a scraper because that's pure end grain to clean it up. Now we can finish our shape. And this end down here, the lower end needs to be down to the size of the little knob on the top. Then get it down closer, and then we can come back up. Reshape our curve going that way a little bit. And now we'll have to go get one of the little knurled knobs and see whether we're close. I think we're still too big. Not by a lot though. If it sticks out a little bit beyond the knob, I'm not really too concerned about it. I can just round that over a little bit in the sanding process. I'm more interested in whether I have the shape the way I want it. I kind of like the sort of the Hershey Kiss kind of a shape on the top. It's what works for me. Guess we could check that one more time. It could take a little bit more off. Do it the right way. And actually put things together to make sure that we have more than enough thread sticking out. If you get these two, if you go to make these and you get it too short, you can always cut this end of it off a little bit and then just peen the corners back over. It's one of them I did the other day. If that was the case. I have about a 1/16 of an inch around that. I think we're going to take a little bit more off. And don't drop the parts on the floor like I just did. Ah, where'd my paper towel go? You little bugger. I sucked it right up into the dust collector, I'm sure. That's going to be good enough. And then we'll go back to our favorite pastime and sand it. So we're going to start with 220. I am going to pull the tailstock back and do this end a little bit, since we kind of didn't do as good of a job on that end as what we could have. You get into this shape here, you have to watch. That's why I felt it and went right back after the sandpaper, because since this is all going in this direction, basically the only side grain is just this little top piece. The rest of it is pretty much end grain. So you got to make sure you're sanding quite well, because we don't really want the surprises of having to sand after the fact. We're now at 400, so I will give that a touch on the end. Go to 600, do the same thing. My left hand is just there, and just in case it decides it wants to pop free. Because right now, with that dust collector that close, if this popped free, I'd have to chase it into the dust collector, because it will suck it right in. This goes into a cyclone before the actual dust collector, so it's not going to get to the dust collector impellers, but lastly is 800. As you can see, I haven't put enough pressure on it, it will stop. That's our top. Once again, a little random orbit sanding. We sanded everything we sanded and sanded basically in the same direction. So we'll just break up any of the scratches that might be there. This one's going to be a little bit different finishing because of having to use the paper towel to get a good fit in there. Paper towel and super glue would instantly suck the super glue in there, so we'll have to do a little bit different. So that's ready for finishing. I'll take it out of this one. I think, if I remember right, that's all right. I'll just take a little bit more off of that. Did this with one of these the other day. So this is the one to do the main body. So that goes up into the 1/16 hole. But I trimmed this down a little bit on this end. So that it made it easier to finish the lids and not have any issue with the holding of it. It's just a simple little tenon. There's actually there. That's good. I can be pretty forceful on one like that because it's not in a place that you're going to crack anything. I can center it up a little bit with the live center, but I really don't need the live center even. It's that tight. And then we'll go ahead and we'll finish this up. Two paper towels and our 3460. I just fold these up. It's not real rocket science. Just try and make it a little less messy. Could even fold it over, and that way I got a little bit more to hold on to. And we'll go back down to crawl speed. We don't want to put this on. You're putting this kind of stuff on. If your lathe doesn't go really slow like this, and just put it on by hand. You don't want to fling this stuff in your face. Even if you're wearing a face shield, you will find you will ruin your face shield if you do it. Do that and get it on your face shield, because there's literally no way to get it off of the face shield. At least none that I've found. I tried to. Acetone is the solvent for super glue, no matter whose it is. Well, acetone and the plastic that those face shields are made of, that's not real, how do you want to put it? Not cooperative at all. I put just a little bit of acetone on right where the super glue was at, and it spidered the face shield right from there before I could even try to wipe off the super glue. So that was a kind of a $10 or $15 mistake. So just like the base, we put lots on. It is still super glue. It wanted to stick fast in my finger. That's why the glove is there. And now we'll use a dry paper towel to dry it off. Pretty much the other half of what I was just using. In this particular one, if you wanted to go through the time and trouble and wanted the super high gloss shine like most pen turners want, this one will allow you to put multiple coats on. But if you've ever done a pen that way, you will know that the multiple coats means that you're going to have to go back and sand to get things smooth and flat. So once, just like the other one, 2 or 3 squirts with the activator. As we chase the lid across the room. Let it sit for a minute. These blue ones come out a little bit, these are a little darker than what one would sort of like, but I mean, they're pretty, but I don't know. Some of these colors in the Spectraply, once you get a clear finish on like that, they are a lot darker than what you may necessarily like. Don't get in a hurry on this one because there is so much end grain sticking out on this one. So I'll just leave it sit there for a minute. I'll show you what at least what the red ones look like. Finished up. I did this pair yesterday. Let's see if I'm zoomed in too far. To zoom out just a little bit. So there's the red ones. This is a red and black. Same process, one coat, and then I'll buff them with Vonex and put a coat or two of carnauba wax on them. The salt shaker has a little rubber bung in the bottom that you can put your finger over top of the holes at the top, fill it up with salt. That bung comes out pretty easily. In the pepper mills, you take the knurled knob off, fill it up with the peppercorns, and grind away. So we'll see how well they do. That's the red one's number 2. This is number 3. I have 6 of the kits. I actually have another blue one ready to do what we just did. But I think what we'll do, rather than doing that, is we'll make the salt shaker part of it. And the salt shaker is much shorter. That piece might be a little too short. I gotta watch because when I got this stuff, there is multiple different colors of it. That one's actually too long. Some of it's a little darker than others. That's what it amounts to. See that one? And that one's not quite a square. This is offcuts from a company that makes baseball or gun stocks with this stuff. So I try and get the matching grains or the matching colors, but I'm also trying not to waste a bunch. Let's see. I need about, I might actually do 2 of them. I think I need about 4.5 inches, 4 3/4 maybe, to the top. So that one's just a shade on the small side. Those 2 are big enough to do the base. Ideally would be to actually have a long enough piece to do the entire thing out of the same piece. That way I wouldn't be screwing around with doing what I'm doing here. Because I'm just afraid this one actually looks like it has more gray in it. Because I know very good and well that there's differences in them. And that to me is just a little too short. Oh well. I'm trying to use up this stuff as much as I can. As I knock some on the floor. I have quite a bit of the blue, more so than the other colors. So this is too long right off the bat. I think what I'll do, they said we want to finish out at about 4.5 inches, I think. Yeah. So I'll just take it at about 4 3/4. Yeah. I'll just turn it around because there's nothing I'm going to do with the square piece that's going to be that small anyhow. I'll get rid of my chalk for the moment. Need to go back to our live center, pointed live center. We'll take that guy off. Go to a step center. I guess we need to mark centers too. It's not a very, that end there is not very cleanly cut. It must have been cut on the bandsaw rather than the chop saw or something. But we'll go corner to corner. One of the things I do with these whenever I got them, because there'll be odd shapes, because they're, like I say, they're used on a gun stock, so the pieces are going to have what they had was whatever came off the gun stock, basically. That was scrap. That's what they had in the bins. And at that point in time, they sold it for $1 a pound, because there's no way to measure anything, so they just sold it by the pound. It's been a lot of years. It's really probably has been a really lot of years since I've been up there. I don't really know. I'd have to ask. I know there were some other guys from our club that would go up from time to time. I don't know whether they're still have it available or not. And at one point in time, they had very little of it because the switch manufacturers, by virtue of the one manufacturing company of this product, had burnt to the ground. So they were trying to, like any good business, they were trying to eliminate some of their waste. So they were getting these people to make the raw blank, which is like 3 feet long and 8 or 10 or 12 inches wide. So they were getting them to make them closer to what they needed. So we'll just take this to the round. Nibble off the corners first. Not quite round yet. Doesn't have to be perfectly round at this point, but now we need a tenon. Not a very big one. Put that in. Now I guess we need to actually measure. I'm gonna go measure my other one. I thought the other one was maybe it was a little bit short. It could have been a little taller. I think we'll go to 5 rather than 4.5. That's going to be our finished end. So we just put a mark around there. Use a narrow parting tool. Open it up a little bit. We also will need a tenon on that end. Probably at some point we'll need a tenon on that end, so I might as well just put it there now. That's just basically a waste piece for now. Take it down to where it's, I don't know, about 3/8 of an inch, something like that. We definitely don't want to part through that. Things would get excited in a very big hurry and not in a good way. Much safer and better. Take that last little bit with a saw. So that's a piece for another day. Now we have our 2 tenons and a round block, so we're ready to start drilling 9 million holes again. This is where it's kind of better off in some ways to do like batches of some of this stuff. Because then you don't have this thing of taking things on and off and in and out and all that good stuff. So now we can put it in our chuck. It should run through with that. It does. Because now we're going to drill holes. Favorite pastime. These are not quite as bad as the mill part, but they're not far off. Actually, the first thing I need to do is we'll go over to there. I want to clean up this end down here just a little slicing cut. I don't have to go in the whole way to the base. because the base is going to get drilled out, but I'm going to go the whole way to the center because I want to make sure that I have that'll be good enough. So one thing about this, I've done enough of these here lately that I don't have to think about what drill bit size. This is 1 3/8 for this, which is what works for the little rubber stopper thing. Speeds down around 600, 700 RPMs. And drill a pretty big hole. Tailstock's loose, and I'm just going to tap it till it finds center, and then I'll lock it in place. Because you are drilling into pure end grain. The only good thing is we're not going to drill very far at this point. We don't need to drill very far. About 3/8 of an inch, something like that. That's probably even farther than what I really needed to drill. Be careful when you take that drill bit out. Even though you drill that little bit, it's warm, quite warm. So now, what I did discover yesterday, I have a big fat drill bit, and this is a regular twist drill bit. We'll see whether it actually will line up to the center. It's not a real good one, that's for sure. And I cut part of the shank of it off. Let's see whether it'll do what I want it to do today. I was drilling these with a Forstner bit. This also allows me to drill them considerably deeper from one side. I guess I really should have taken the time to measure that. I do have a line on there, but that was the one I did yesterday. I don't want to drill too deep because the top you go more like 4.5. We can go in up into there. Because the little metal part at the top is only like 3/4 of an inch. This is considerably easier to do it with this twist bit than it is with the Forstner bit. You have to clean it out though. There's so much glue in there that it sort of, I don't know, I guess it sort of melts it a little bit. We don't want to get a drill bit stuck. That's most of our holes drilled. We'll have one more hole to drill on the other side, other end of it yet, but for now we finish up this side of it. which is another little scraper, double beveled scraper. It wants to cut out center. Looks about good right there. This is what I do with the pepper mills. I'm doing with all this stuff is I'm cleaning up this Forstner bit mark. This is also not 90 degrees. It comes up straight here, and then this part is cut back a little bit. The other thing I'm going to do is clean up this end a little bit. Nice light cut. Once again, that I probably could use a quick trip to the grinder too, so that this is all tapered in a little bit. I needed to take that sharp edge off too. And then our next step is our little bung. This is like a recess kind of tool. It's homemade. It's nothing more than really just a scraper as well. But it's going to go in behind that hole that I drilled and make a recess in there. Because we got to have a place for that little bung to go to. Which should be good there. But I did not clean that up. I don't want it to tear that little bung out. Now I have to get rid of all the crap. So that works. So rather than having right now, using that tool, it basically goes in there, goes almost like straight in, and then there's a shoulder sticking out. I'm going to take just basically a little sort of a hollowing tool. Once again, it's a negative rake scraper. And I'll just go in there and clean that up a little bit. Make it a nice sort of smooth transition between the two. Because to me, a lot of this stuff is all in the details. And it's rather hard to get the dust out of them. So now we're back to our typical sand and sand some more. Like I say, these are a little bit, this part of them, the salt shakers are a little bit easier to do than the pepper mills. A little bit less of it's more of a precise kind of thing. Try and round that little section over a little bit in there so that it doesn't tear up the little rubber stopper. And we will go the whole way through the grits. It's pretty much the only time you have the sand is there. So in order to get the fuzzies off up in there from the drill hole, piece of dowel rod has a little slot cut in it. Piece of sandpaper on it. A piece of sandpaper is getting a little short, but that's pretty much all I do to them. It's just I just want to be able to get rid of the fuzzies in there. Now the real trick is to get rid of the dust. I just sort of shove a paper towel in there and spin it around. It seems to get the majority of it out. Not really worried if, that was 180 grit paper in there, so I'm not really worried about it being a smooth finish in there. It's just when you drill a piece of wood, it's not smooth when you're done. And I will seal it the whole way up through. So we're back to our 3460. Here I'll just dribble some in there. Get my paper towel wet. This stuff really soaks it in. Now we'll take our paper towel and I'll make a line right up across it. I'll try and stick that in there as far as I can. And use my finger. Notice I'm not spinning the lathe under power. I don't think it would be a good idea to stick your finger in a 7/8 inch hole and spin it. Especially with the glove on, you could actually probably tear your finger off or something stupid. So just like before, we're going to dry it. We're going to accelerate it. This we're going to accelerate pretty good because I'm only going to give it a couple seconds here and I'm going to polish it because there's no, there again, if I was going to do these in multiples, which is how I should be doing them, I could just leave that sit for a couple hours or whatever, but we're not going to spend a couple hours. So just use some abrasive paste on it. just to make sure that everything is nice and smooth. I'm not going to try, I don't even go up inside. I don't feel the necessary need for it. Just gives it a nice polished appearance down there. And a little protection because that abrasive paste has a wax in it. That's the bottom done. Now we need to drill more holes. Actually, before we drill the next hole through the top, since we have it well supported, we're done with this tenon. Done with the long tool rest too. We'll give this top a little bit of shape. Yeah. That actually might be a good view right there. Shows you a little bit more, even though the stupid hose is in the road a little bit. So I'm going to give this the curved top that it's going to get right now. So that when I drill it, I have a nice clean drill hole. And I probably need to go switch back to my spindle gouge because it's much pointier. That was a bowl gouge that I did the rest of it with. So I can get in there just about to the center of the live center, or closer to it. That way the rest of it gets drilled out. And I'll drill down to where it meets the other hole. In this case, it's actually fairly, there's probably 3/4 of an inch or so of material in there. Yeah, at least. So now we know that we can actually take this and sit it beside the pepper mill. It makes more sense, I guess, if it was overhead that you could actually see something. There to there. So if we take our pepper mill and we set this beside it, I think it could probably be a little bit shorter. And I have material in there, so I'm going to make it a little bit shorter. Once again, we can always take more material off, but we can't put it back on, so this all worked out just fine. I'll go back to my sort of, what do you want to call it, a disposable kind of a live center. Just a piece of resin, playing around with some resin. I made a couple of these. You can see it's not even polished. It just has been turned. So we just give it some support. That's really all I'm after. Because if I go cutting out here with the bowl gouge or anything, I'm going to get a vibration. So if it has a little support, then I can get rid of the vibration. I won't be able to go quite the whole way in, at least to start with. I think I'm going to take about 3/8 of an inch off of it. I can make V cuts with my spindle gouge. As you can see now, the live center is doing absolutely nothing. I really want to bring it back up a little bit. I do have a little bit of a recess to cut in there yet, so just that little support makes this thing not vibrate, not do anything funny. Make sure we still have plenty of room in there. Now at this point, the little silver top would just fit in there like that, but it would sit up there proud. And I don't like that. That looks like, to me, if you did it that way, and I've seen people do it that way, it just looks like you didn't take the time to actually finish something, is my opinion. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to use my little recess tool. And I only want to go in there just a tiny little ways. Make a recess that's probably went too far again, but I usually go too far. And it also left to clean up along the sides of this a little bit too. So now that sits in there. I could probably take just a whisker off of that. Of course, half the battle is getting this little thing back out. Come on. There we go. So the extra little whisker that I'm going to take off is going to be with the scraper. because it is end grain, and end grain's the ideal thing for a scraper. And that'll be just right. And now that it fits in there perfect, I know it won't come out. I just use, this is one that I have one of the little rubber things and one of these that's my test pieces. So right now would be a very good time, probably the best time, to actually sand this end down here, because I have total access to it. I won't necessarily finish it at this point, but I will sand it. Just a little easier than trying to get in there beside a live center to do it. And it doesn't take very long to do it at this stage either. At 600, then I'll sort of knock that real sharp edge off. Make sure there's no big hairy sticking up. Once again, I have a bit of a lip in there. Forgot that. I want to take that out. Going behind the lip. It's all by feel. You can't see anything. Now I'll go ahead and finish that. This is why making pepper mills and salt shakers takes so long. There's so many little like individual steps to finishing this stuff. Since we have everything nicely sanded, I might as well put the finish on the end as well. Just like before, I'm going to wipe off the excess. That also stiffened all the fibers up because it's all end grain. We're pretty much done cutting down there anyhow. Use about 3 times the amount of activator that I normally would on something like that. So now, my memory serves me correctly. It's too big. We'll go back to our same method as what we've been using. We're going to have to recut this though. After I get my glove off. Because that's too loose. Not really even close. I can make this a little bit wider. And then we'll give this a taper. Still not close. So we have a taper. We'll go back to a flat. Make another taper. We're pretty close. Doesn't have, this is there again, just like the one earlier, it doesn't really have to be exact. This time I don't want to put a piece of paper towel in there, because we could possibly find some super glue. It's still not quite set up yet. So that would be a bit of an issue. We must have cut it a taper. I'm not really. There we go. So that'll work. Since that also has super glue on it, I'm going to put a little wax on here. Because wax and super glue do not get along. So that means I won't stick it fast. don't have any possibility of sticking it fast to that. That'll work. As before, we'll bring our live center up. Our live center is actually going to hit more so in underneath that little recess that I made in there as well. Basically, just like the mill itself, we're going to go back down here. I actually made this tenon a little bit deeper than what I should have. I try and keep these tenons very small or very shallow, just so that I don't have to remove a bunch of material right there. And we'll give it the same, basically the same design as the top. So that means we have two beads down here. Not quite. I don't want to be working totally on the end of the tool rest. It's just exciting to have it drop off. So mark it. And it's just a matter of wiggling it back and forth. As you can see, it cuts a little bit on each side. And do them both at this together. And when the line disappears down the middle of it, you know you're round. You can put a, if I was doing some sort of regular type wood rather than this stuff, I usually will put a little bit of a pencil line on there so that I know when I get to the perfect circle, or a perfect bead in the middle, rather than not a perfect circle. That's pretty much just make the take some material away a little bit. Try and keep our shape similar to the top. The other one that I did, the red one, I thought of it after the fact that I should have had a measurement, or at least an idea how big this section is in here, so that I can sort of make them the same. So we'll get right down into that groove. Now we'll get back to our sort of hourglass kind of shape. Just out and look, see whether we're there. They're just about the same as what the pepper mill is. Not, need to refine the shape a little bit. Also, I'm gonna sort of a flat kind of a bead here. This stuff can be kind of chippy too. And of course, it's going to be the inopportune place, like right in the middle. So that took care of that. So now we could line up, put them side by side, and say, okay, we're going to live with it like that. And we're going to be back to sanding. We're going to get all new sandpaper to sand this time. Like I say, this stuff, since there's so much glue in it, it just kind of like wears everything out quickly. As always, we're going to slow down. We don't want to incinerate our fingers. I did a pretty good job. I didn't have any, I don't see any, I don't really feel any lumps or ridges, so I'm able to start with 220. But it really wasn't, it really wouldn't matter. If I had to go back to 180 or 150, then I could do so. If I have something that I need to work out a little bit more. Work a little bit harder up here at this top edge because I want this to come back to a sharp edge. And you see the amount of crap that stays behind. If you don't wipe it off, all you do is continue to sort of grind that into the grain of the wood instead of sanding the wood. And I'm using the cut edge, the two cut edges, so they can get down in that little groove. That was 320. $400. And 400, then I start rounding that edge over up there. 600. As you can see, you now have a hold of things. Things has a tendency, it'll pull right out of your hand. Even a piece of sandpaper. Lastly, it'll be 800. Not that this is necessarily a good time. Yeah, we're smaller, a little bit smaller than the actual mill itself. In that coved out area. Little random orbit sanding and make sure, give it the last inspection. The little edge felt like it could be a little bit sharper than it needed to be. Get our dirt off. Turn the noisemaker off. And then we're ready to finish it up. And the glove. And we'll just fold our paper towel up just like we've been doing. Once again, 3460 because of it being Spectre ply. Just does, it seems to do a little bit better job on this kind of stuff than the 3408 will. Not that you couldn't use the 3408, but you got to put like tons and tons of it on because it just keeps soaking it in. So when I use this, it just does a little bit easier. Still isn't easy. There we go. Put a drop or two right in that groove, and I drop it, dribble it on as I go along, because I want to saturate it. keep spreading it out. You can see there'll be places, you can see as it spins around, there's places that look dull. That's places that has really soaked in. So I definitely want to make sure I hit those places quite well. Put just a little bit more on. I'd rather waste a little bit than not get enough in there and get it totally sealed in. Totally filled in, I guess should be more the terminology. And we have about 45 or 50 seconds to do the job, so it's not like we're in a hurry. At least not in a giant size hurry anyhow. And then we'll wipe off the excess. As we're wiping off the excess, we're smearing it around any of the places that still might be a little dry. It's gonna fill them in as we go. It does reactivate the dye that's in that wood a little bit. Doesn't seem to do it to the point of when like this, the blue and the gray. It doesn't really turn the gray a blue gray or anything like that. It's not activating it enough. We got to watch which direction we wipe with the paper towel, because we could be shoving little particles into end grain. So it looks dry. There's some little bits of paper towel sticking on there, but I'm not going to worry about that. They'll come right off with the buffing part of it. So we'll use our activator again on this. Hit it like 3 times. Not up close and personal though, at a distance. At least 12 to 18 inches away. I just want to land the mist on it. I don't want a big glob of the activator on there. And that's pretty much it. Anybody have any questions, comments? Give that a minute to set up before I go grabbing it with my fingers. And I'll show you what the end result of the 2 pieces together. And then it's going to be lunchtime for me. Not big messes. Doesn't make a big mess to make these. That's probably kind of a good thing in some ways. The only downfall is I got to run the dust collector pretty much all the time because of the amount of dust that comes off of this stuff. So if we get that to sit, cooperate. See if I can get them both to sit still. So there they are. They're salt and pepper shaker. They will not get finished till tomorrow. I have some other things to do today. But they will get their buffing and assembled. It's not a real lot to assemble them, but that all gets done last. That's pretty much going to be it for me. Gotta go make some lunch. Gotta go get gas in my truck in a little while. Because Daddy-O, if you're watching you, I'm going to go over and get gas over at the other Giant because I have 60 cents a gallon off. And I'll probably do that late enough that I will just go fuel up and then I will stop and pick you up on the way back through so we can go to that meeting tonight. Other than that, let's see if I can see if there's anybody else on. I can end that one. This is also being broadcast on